Good day, and thank you for tuning in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. For all of our new listeners and viewers who are tuning in for the very first time, I'm Pastor Pope, and thank you for allowing us to come into your viewing environment. We are here with you every Monday through Friday from 12:30 p.m. until 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, broadcasting live from the FijiWater.com sponsored studio, where you can discuss careers, finances, entrepreneurship. You can discuss marriage, divorce, raising children, blending families. You can discuss dating and relationships, whatever's in your heart, whatever's on your mind. God is concerned about that which concerns you. And that is the reason that we are here in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast, which is brought to you daily by Fiji Water, Earth's finest water. You may already know that Fiji water comes from Fiji. However, did you know that it is created by nature? It is untouched by man. It starts as a tropical rainfall which slowly filters through layers of volcanic rock, where the water collects in a natural, sustainable artesian aquifer where it is bottled right at the source, free from human contact until you unscrew the blue cap. Fiji Water, Earth's finest water, will be delivered right to your front door when you subscribe for delivery, and you'll save money at FijiWater.com. This is not just ordinary water. This is Earth's finest water at FijiWater.com. And for those of you who continue giving on the Give segment of our app at New Life-Delaware, and those of you that have made a weekly or monthly commitment to support the broadcast by giving on the contribution pages of our websites at NewLifeMinistriesInternational.com and NewLifeInternationalCDC.com, and those of you who continue using the QR code or the link provided on Facebook or YouTube. We thank all of you for your continued support and for your commitment as we fulfill our commitment to God to be here for you in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. And I want to remind all of our listeners and viewers, we are Facebook Live, we are YouTube Live at Daily Divine Direction, and we encourage you to tune in to the Sunday sermon at New Life Christian Center, 400 Hillcrest Avenue in Wilmington, Delaware, 19809. There's parking on Hillcrest. We are the brown brick building located right on the corner of Hillcrest and Marsh Road. Service begins at 10 a.m. If you're in our area, come and worship with us. Come and experience a better quality of life. And if you're not in our area, this is what we want you to do. We want you to tune in on YouTube at New Life Christian Center Pastor Pope, where we go live at 10:45 a.m. every Sunday. We want everyone to experience a better quality of life. So you can stay tuned in and you can stay connected with us throughout the week, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We play music on our internet radio station, WKAPFaith.com, WKAP Faith Empowerment Radio. The music will encourage you, empower you, and inspire you to become the best version of ourselves that we can possibly become. And so I'm going to address a communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that you want to have a child, however, you are not married. And you said, is it wise to attempt to raise a child without a spouse? It's one thing, so let me begin by saying this. If you are unmarried and you have a child, it's one thing to raise a child alone out of necessity, because it's necessary. It's another thing to make a decision that you are going to try to have a child and raise that child by yourself. Is it possible? Of course. Why would you, though, do it if you do not find it necessary? Why not wait on the Lord? You know, one of the things we don't ever want to do is try to outrun God, try to outpace the Lord. So whatever pace that God has you on the path to the purpose of your life, you've got to walk out that path. Don't try to get ahead of God by deciding that you just want to do it because you want to have a child. Now, is it a beautiful thing? Absolutely. To have children, you know, I'm not going to repeat my nephew's opinion on that return on investment, but I am going to say this. It is a great thing to have children. The Bible tells us to be fruitful and multiply. But the reality is, if you want to have a child, let's try to do it. You know, yesterday I talked about doing things decently and in order, but let's try to do things in the order that God intended for us and not in the order that we intend for ourselves. Because let me tell you something. Being a single parent is a big responsibility. Being a single parent is going to require a lot from you that you may not be able to give it all. You've got to know that at the end of the day, there's a reason that God gave Eve to Adam. There's a reason that God said it's not good for man, meaning mankind, to be alone. Pardon me. We've always taken that just as it's not good for man to be alone. Well, it's not good for man to be alone. But it's also not good for mankind to be alone. We all, I mentioned yesterday, I guess it was, or the day before, how God is a God of order. And I know that was yesterday that I talked about the order. I'm not sure if it's the day before or yesterday that I mentioned, when God does things in order. When he told Noah to take the animals in the ark, he told him, take 2 of the unclean and 7 of the clean. Now, the point I'm trying to make to that is, he didn't say any of them needed to be alone. Well, it's the same with us. 2 is better than 1. A threefold cord cannot be broken. You have to recognize that 2 is truly better than 1. You don't want to get ahead of God. There's a reason that you're not married right now. You're not ready for marriage. And when I say that, I'm not suggesting that you don't want to be married. I read your communication. You are not, it's not that you're adverse to getting married. You're just getting ahead of God. So open yourself up first, your heart up first, and allow God to do what he's going to do. Meaning this, make yourself available, not to everybody, but make yourself available to whoever God sends. And then the 2 of you make a decision to join together in holy matrimony. Then you can, God willing, bear children, have a child, have children, and raise them and nurture them to be all that God has purposed for them to be. You don't want to get ahead of yourself just because society says it's okay to do it. Because society tells us to do a lot of things that we don't need to do. It teaches us to do things that are not necessarily going to be conducive for our success. And here's the bottom line. You want a child, so that's nice that you've identified that. But let's take the steps in order. So allow God to send you a husband first, and then whomever God has appointed for your life, don't you choose the wrong one. Whoever God appointed for your life will reveal himself to you. The 2 of you then begin the process of forming a relationship, and then make decisions about your long-term future together. And then marriage is next on the agenda. And then children, children. A child or multiple. That's okay. Because what that will allow you to do is to, first of all, live your lives with a sense of order. And secondly, it will allow you to love and nurture your child or your children to become all God has purposed them to become. You don't want to get ahead of God. And you certainly don't want to just make a decision that because you're not married, you just want to have a child. Why would you if it's not necessary? Sometimes it's necessary to raise children by yourself, but that's not the preference. Because if you have one and there's one of you, you're already outnumbered. Now, I know mathematically you may not, but you got to deal with somebody else's personality. And then you got to deal with your own personality. So you're already outnumbered 2-1. Because there's 2 of you, even though you only have 1 child. And then, as my wife always says, 2 is 10. If you got 2, you might as well have 10. Because there's always going to be the responsibility of being a parent. The great thing is you have When you have two parents, you're going to be able to try to navigate this thing. And when you have two parents who love the Lord, then you'll be able to navigate this thing called life so much more effectively and efficiently. And our children will be blessed and highly favored. And we continue to move forward into the fullness of God and then learn to maximize the fullness of God. You know, some people want to use the word manifest. I say maximize, because that is manifestation, but it's the fullness of that. And when I talk about that, I'm always referring to not just the generation in which we live, but the generations that are to come. You know, your grandchildren, your unborn grandchildren, your all of those that are part of the legacy of God. So you want to know if you should do it, and the answer to that is it's not wise. You said, is it wise to attempt? It's not wise to attempt. It may be necessary in some cases, but it's not wise to try and do it without a spouse. Two of you together are going to be much more effective and much more efficient in getting your child or your children in the future to the place that God has appointed for their lives. This segment of the broadcast is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest, fastest, and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. So if you're not currently a T-Mobile customer, you may call or text on the T-Mobile call or text line at 267-992-1424. We will move you into our queue so that you may become a T-Mobile customer and experience America's largest, fastest, and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. Taxes and fees are included in your bill, and if you auto pay by attaching a credit card to your account, you will receive a discount on your monthly bill at T-Mobile, America's largest, fastest, and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. I'm going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that your husband says you need a lot of attention, and you said perhaps he's right, and you want to know, how do you reduce the need for so much attention? So think about this. I want to just share with you that people who need a lot of attention, there is a void. You've got to identify what the empty void is in your life that you feel that you need so much attention. You have to be able to identify what it is that's causing you to crave that type of attention. You know, your husband said you want it inside the house, you want it outside the house, you want it everywhere you go, you want to be all eyes on you, spotlight on you. This is what your husband said. So the question has to be, why is it that what is the void in your life that when you enter the room, you feel that you have to be the center of attention? And once you determine what that empty void is, you can then begin to fill up the hole. And so I'm going to take you down the spiritual path. And that is that even though you attend church, and that's a beautiful thing, and, you know, I wish you were in our area. We'd love to have you, but you're not. So even though you attend church, the void that is in your life is relationship. And one of the things that you think attention will do for you is allow you to have relationships with others. But you got to know that even the attention that you get, the reason you keep craving it is because it's artificially stimulated. You're not getting the attention that you need is a real relationship with the Lord. And I know you may, you know, some of our listeners and viewers are sitting there right now saying, Pastor Pope, that's easy to say because you're a pastor. Well, no. we still have to recognize that without a relationship with the Lord, our spirit is never going to be full. No matter how good life may be, and I mentioned this on Sunday, no matter how good your perception of life might be, you're still going to have an empty hole that exists. The only way to fill that hole is with a true relationship with the Lord. Because then you realize that the eyes of others on you is not important as long as the eyes of God are on you. You know, trying to develop relationships with people who applaud you just because you're present, and what I mean by that is they're giving you all of the accolades just because you're present and because you're the center of attention, is only going to last as long as you're present. So you got to know that a real relationship with the Lord is the only thing that fills an empty void in our lives. It's the only thing that will allow us to be fulfilled. Everything else is just stuff. But that is true fulfillment. I have a relationship with the Lord. That's true fulfillment. That is, I know that God is doing something in my life that's so much greater than I could ever perform on my own. You want to talk about the greatest performance you'll ever play? Is the purpose that God has for your life. Because that's always going to be greater than you can purpose for yourself. So we have to understand that there's an empty void that you're trying to fill with the attention. And your husband struggles with the attention that you need because he says it's a lot. It's a lot. And you're one of the people in society, because there's many of you, don't think you're the only one, who need a lot of attention. They crave it. It's important to them. But you have to know that that's only going to last as long as you can continue to do things that will get the attention of others. And at some point, that's going to become a problem more than it is a solution. Doing more things, being more active and engaged is only going to lead to eventually some drama, some conflict or some drama. So I'm going to encourage you by saying this. You don't concern yourself with the applause of others. Don't concern yourself with the accolades of others. I mean, everyone wants to be appreciated. But that hole you're trying to fill is not going to be filled until you have a real relationship with the Lord. So I'm going to encourage you to work on that. And you may say, well, Pastor Pope, how do I work on that? I go to church on Sundays, yes. But you got to read your Bible. You got to increase your prayer life. You got to meditate. You got to do all of the things that we know connect us to God, so that we can focus more on our purpose than we do on ourselves. Now, I'm not suggesting that we all shouldn't be cognizant of our self-care. I'm talking about focusing more on the purpose as opposed to the person of ourselves. The purpose of ourselves is more important and is going to be more fulfilling than the personal preference of ourselves. So we've got to make certain that we turn things, change the course of direction. Don't focus so much on you. Focus on your purpose. And if you do that, you're going to find that you'll begin to walk in more peace. You will find that it will be less demanding on you and on your spouse to get what you need in a relationship with the Lord. So, prayer, meditation, and the Bible. Spending time in the Word of God. That's going to allow you to get into the relationship that will fill the empty void in your life. This segment of the broadcast is brought to you by Charles Tyrwhitt, located in London, the UK. They also have stores in New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and at the King of Prussia Mall in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So if you're in any of those areas, stop in at their retail store. They have everything a man could possibly need: shirts for men, ties for men, suits for men, and accessories. And if you're not in any of those areas, you can order from Charles Tyrwhitt at ctshirts.com. They will ship and deliver right to your front door at an appropriate period of time. And The White Company, located in London, the UK. They also have a store on Fifth Avenue in New York. So if you're in New York, stop in at the retail store. They have everything that you could possibly need: home goods, clothing for men, women, and children. And if you're not in New York, you can order from The White Company at thewhitecompany.com. I'm going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that people come to you constantly for advice. You provide them with advice. They do not follow the instructions, and then they come back to tell you what went wrong. And you want to know, why do they ask if they're not going to use it? Listen, sometimes people, when they ask you for advice, they really are just, in some instances, just using you as a sounding board. In other words, they are coming to you and asking you because, first of all, they know they won't hear it again. Second of all, they know that you're going to give them good information, but then they'll decide whether or not they use it. And here's the thing. The good news is your only responsibility is to give them the advice. That's your only responsibility. Now, you indicated in your communication you're not the I told you so, and that's a good thing. You're not the I told you so person. But you're saying they come back to you and tell you what went wrong, but they didn't follow your advice. They didn't follow the instructions. Well, what they're basically telling you is they didn't follow the instructions, and because they didn't follow the instructions, it didn't work out. You want to know, why do they ask if they're not going to use it? That's not your problem. Your concern isn't that they're not using it. Your concern is that they'll never be able to say you didn't give them the advice. Because that's what's important. What's important is you just give it to them and then let them do with it what they may. You know, I always let you into our world in the sense of, you know, one of the things we always tell our children: if you ask us something, we're going to give you an answer. Whether you like the answer or not, we're going to give you the truth. And we're going to give you an answer. And then we're going to give you, you know, because you're asking, we'll give you advice and recommendations. And then you get to decide what you do with it. But you'll never be able to say, well, Mom, Dad, why didn't you tell me that? Mom, Pops, why didn't you tell me this would happen? You're never going to be able to say that. Because if you ask, we're going to tell you. Now, we've trained them growing up. We've nurtured them, developed them, and they know the difference between right and wrong. They know the difference between success and failure. They know that, you know, they know all the basic things they need to know. And they're adults now. So they know all the basics. They may not know all the ebbs and flows of life, because none of us know all the ebbs and flows of life. But they do know that we've lived long enough to have experienced life in a way that they have not experienced life. So when they ask, we tell them. We don't track them down to tell them things. We share information with them, whether it's articles we've read or whatever, but we don't track them down every day and say, you should be doing that, because we have our own lives to live. They have their own lives to live. But if you call us or text us or come to visit and you ask, we're going to share the information with you, because you'll never be able to say, my parents didn't tell me that, or you never shared that information with me. Never going to happen. Active and engaged parents don't do that. We're here to provide you with the tools to build a life for yourself. If you use those tools, you're going to build a great quality of life. If you don't use those tools, because we lay the foundation in Christ Jesus, and then we build on that, and then we let you watch us build, and then we give you the tools so that you can build also. If you decide that you're going to do something differently, then the only thing we're going to do every day is continue to pray for you. So don't worry about them not using it. Your only responsibility is to give it to them. Give them what they're asking for. Now, and when I say that, meaning the advice, the recommendations that they're asking for. What do you think about this? Do you have any recommendations about that? And one of the things you'll find is that the more mature people become, the more they're willing to ask questions. Because maturity will do that. Maturity will say, if I ask that question, look, you got to know, all of us have to know we don't know everything. But if you ask for advice or recommendation, we'll give it to you. Moving forward, you get to decide how you use it. You get to decide if you use it. You get to decide you're not going to use it. And when they come back to you and say, well, that didn't work out, this is what happened, this is what went wrong, what they're telling you is they had their own experience, and this is how it worked out for them. Because you're not talking about people that their problems are costing you money. You're talking about just family and friends who are constantly asking you for advice. The reason they're asking you for advice is because they know you have good advice. They know that. They just don't follow the instructions. I'll take you a little further than that. I'm not a cook. Okay, I don't cook. I cook once a year. New Life men are cooking at our church. All the men cook for the women. We serve a brunch, and it's a glorious day. And then I'm done for the year. My point is, when you're cooking, there's a recipe. There's ingredients that are all in the recipe. If you look at a recipe and decide you're not going to put in certain ingredients, it's never going to come out the way it's supposed to come out. Well, it's the same thing about life. If you're given good, sound counsel and you choose not to use it, that's what's happening with them. Your friends and family, they choose not to use it. It's not going to taste so good when it's done. And they've got to live with that. You don't have any more responsibility. And if it costs them money, don't let it cost you money. You just listen when they tell you what went wrong and let them figure it out. Because you gave them the tools, you gave them the information, you gave them the tools, you gave them the recipe. They chose not to put in the ingredients, and now it doesn't taste so good. The Bible says, taste and see that the Lord is good. God is never going to leave us without instruction. That's what that Holy Bible does for us. The handbook of living, your basic instructions before leaving earth. We have a book of instruction. We've got a whole handbook that we can refer to. We choose not to, we've got to live with that. Well, it's the same thing about life. If we're giving advice and giving recommendations and we don't live it out and we don't use it to our advantage and we don't accept it and we decide to do something our own way, then we have to live with the outcome. And those are the variables of life. Just keep doing what you're doing. Share the information, and hopefully everything, they'll become much better at using the information that you provided. Today's Daily Divine Direction broadcast 3D has been brought to you by Fiji Water. A taste of paradise will be delivered right to your front door when you subscribe for delivery, and you'll save money at FijiWater.com. May God bless you today. May God keep his face turned towards you. May God give you peace that surpasses all understanding. I look forward to being in your listening and viewing environment tomorrow. Have a great day today. God bless you. Remember, we are Facebook Live, YouTube Live at Daily